Good morning and welcome back. My name is John. I'm Orphan Car Garage. I'm located in Abington, Massachusetts, which is about 30 minutes south of Boston. One quick side note here before we get into the subject at hand, and I just want to revert back to my last video on that stunning 1969 AMC AMX that I posted about a week ago. That car is, by the way, still available. I don't expect it to be for much longer, but if you didn't see the video, I suggest you go back and check it out. And of course, check out all the photos on my website of that car. However, during the video of that car, I filmed that car, that video, the pictures during a solar eclipse. And in doing so, in my video, I mentioned the eclipse as being a lunar eclipse. And of course, it was a solar eclipse. I don't know why I said lunar, but I did. And it seemed to trigger a lot of people in the comments. So I apologize for that. It was certainly a solar eclipse, not a lunar eclipse. I will now know to stay in my lane, stick to the cars at hand, and stay away from astronomy. So I apologize to those that I seem to upset by calling that a lunar eclipse. It was a solar eclipse. No eclipse today. The sun is bright and sunny here in Abington, Massachusetts, and we have a car to profile that's made us quite famous here at Orphan Car Garage. In fact, a lot of people call us looking for these particular cars, and it's few and far between these days that we're able to find good ones, and this was a pretty good one. This is a Corvair, of course, by Chevrolet, and this is a 1964 Corvair Monza Club Coupe is what it was called. And this car has a rather interesting story, and I'm going to give it to you right now. This car is part of an estate sale. I'm helping the family sell this car along with some others that we'll be profiling shortly on the channel. I have personally known this car for the better part of 20 or 25 years. This car belonged to a very notorious Corvair mechanic in southern Maine, who sadly passed away about a year ago. He owned an independent repair shop in northern Massachusetts in the 1970s. And when the Chevrolet dealers stopped repairing Corvairs, as they so commonly did in the early 70s when these cars went out of production, they would send their Corvair customers to him. So he became sort of the Corvair guy in town, and became famous for fixing and maintaining these little cars throughout the 70s and 80s. This is a car that he serviced for its original owner. Her name was Mrs. Beeman. And when Mrs. Beeman became unable to drive the car any longer, the gentleman purchased the car from her. So he owned this car probably, we're going to guess, from probably around the mid or late 1980s until his passing just last year. So he actually named this car Mrs. Beeman in her honor, and I hope the next owner continues that tradition. This is a great little car that's been obviously very, very well maintained and driven rather sparingly over the past 30 years or so, used primarily as a collector car. Now, Mrs. Beeman, I assume, lived in Massachusetts because the gentleman's shop was in northern Massachusetts when he worked on this car, but there are many signs that this car did not originally come from Massachusetts, and I'm going to get into that when we do our walk around. You'll notice right away that the car is a really cool 1960s color. They called this meadow green in 1964. This is a repaint of the original paint. It is the original color, but it's a repaint, probably done in the 1980s, and it's rather thin. We had our paint guys come in and do a professional 3-stage buffing on it, and we got a little bit of a gleam out of it, as you can see there in the sun, but it's not perfect. It's a very presentable paint, but not a show car by any means. This is going to be a very affordable entry-level Corvair for somebody. Very, very, very solid body with no rust that I can find. The undercarriage has never been undercoated and is in beautiful condition. You'll see photos of that on my website. So you can see where I'm going with this. I believe this car, a little chip here in the paint. You can see where I'm going with this, and I believe this car probably wasn't driven much in New England. Mrs. Beeman may have been a transplant from another part of the country, and I'm going to get to some more details of this car that lead me to believe that as well. But first and foremost is the solidity of the car and the straightness of the car and the lack of bodywork on the car. Very, very, very nice example of an early model Corvair coupe. This is an early model. It's known in the Corvair circles as an early. The last year for it, 1964. And in 1964, Chevrolet added the transverse leaf spring to the rear suspension to kind of quell the complaints from the automotive press on that negative camber and the rear wheels under hard corners. So that was resolved in 1964 with that transverse leaf spring, and this car is so equipped. Speaking of equipped, you'll also notice the cross flags there on the engine lid. That means the car has the optional 110 horsepower engine. Standard on this car would have been a 95 horsepower engine. And of course, on top of the 110, you could also get the Spider with this turbocharged 150 horsepower, which this car is not. You can see that there was some touch up there on the paint at one point. Very presentable, but obviously has its flaws. We did what we could. Nice chrome, bezels, trim, no complaints there at all. 64 was the only year that had these, the early models that had wheel opener moldings that blend into that rocker panel molding, all in terrific condition, all the way around. Front bumper the same, with those really cool accessory bumper guards. Bezels are almost perfect. Many times that black paint is all worn away. Another area for these to generally rust is in these eyebrows here over the headlights. Nothing. Really, really clean. While I'm over here, you'll notice that there's a bow tie mirror on the passenger door, which is a nice feature. We've got a factory rear mounted antenna, which is sort of unusual. We don't see that too often, but you'll notice we have a front antenna as well, and we'll get to that reasoning in a moment. I'm going to go around the back and I'm going to show you another feature of this car that leads me to believe it was not originally a New England car. Something rarely seen in Corvairs, especially 1964s. There's that clean engine bay, spare tire, a brand new battery, and a brand new fuel pump. This car starts up and runs great. The tune-up does not look that old. The car has been sitting quite a bit since 2017. That's the last time this car was registered in the state of Maine. So here, for those of you that don't know, that's what they call an oil bath air cleaner or a desert pack option. Not something that you would see generally in a New England ordered car. These were ordered generally in states that were very dry with a lot of sand, dust, the southwest portion of the country, things like that. Maybe down south a little bit more. We very rarely saw a New England car with a oil bath air cleaner in it from the factory. The dealer ordered it that way. Very rarely seen, very cool, unusual. And again, not something you'd normally see in a New England car, along with another option this car has that's rarely seen, soft gray tinted glass. And I don't know if you can see that. Kind of hard to see. I have a picture of it on my website. All the glass in this car is factory tinted. Again, not something you generally saw in a New England ordered car unless it was air conditioned, which this car is not. So we've got a super solid clean body, an undercarriage that's never been undercoated, rust free, an oil bath air cleaner, tinted glass, and also the car is not equipped from the factory with windshield washers. Just a single speed wiper. It does not have the 2-speed wipers with the windshield washer option. Almost unheard of on a car that would have been ordered in New England. Dealers almost always ordered these with windshield washers and 2-speed wipers because we needed it up here for winter driving. The interior of this car is called off-white. We believe that the seat covers have been replaced. They're too nice to be original, but they're absolutely correct. Most likely Clark's Corvair parts reproductions. The back seat, beautiful condition. We'll assume that the side panels and door panels are original, as is the headliner. I apologize for the bright sun. It was supposed to be cloudy today, and that didn't happen. Usually that's a good thing, but I actually prefer clouds when I do this to avoid the crazy shadowing. There's a driver's door panel that's in really nice shape. 64 was the only year of the early models that had a map pocket. And look, we've got some old notes in there, probably from Mrs. Beeman. Original style accessory GM floor mat in good condition, a push button AM radio, and a day-night mirror. And there, folks, is why we have a front antenna. This car has a very vintage and very cool CB radio. The gentleman added these to all his cars in the 70s, and we have the speaker for it right here. We chose not to remove it. It's an original warning sticker in the glove box. A lot of originality in this car. We chose not to remove it. I would probably leave it. It's very retro, very vintage, and it goes with that outside antenna. But if the next owner didn't feel it needed to be there, it could easily be removed. The odometer of this car shows 22,637, and given the notes that we have from the gentleman that owned it, that has rolled over to 122,637. Does not hinder the way the car drives or runs. It runs really, really, really good. And before we end this video, I will run the car for you. All of his cars in his collection were rust-proofed at one point. All the vehicles, and you'll see that as we profile them as we go along over the next several weeks. Every one of his cars has these red plugs, which would indicate to us that he rust-proofed the vehicles probably in the 1980s. Not a bad thing. A really cool Veteran Motor Car Club of America sticker, presumably left there from Mrs. Beeman. Maybe she or her husband was a veteran. And you'll see here the last registration sticker from the state of Maine from 2016 into 2017. I'm gonna do one last quick walk around here and start the vehicle for you. This is gonna be a super affordable entry-level Corvair that's not gonna need a lot of attention. I will say that the tires on this car look fairly old, probably 20 years or more on the tires. I would probably put a new set of tires on this car if I was the next owner. Other than that, it's extremely turnkey, very, very drivable, good brakes, good transmission, does not seem to leak any oil, which is unusual with a Corvair. You expect a drop here and there, but I have not seen one yet. Probably should not have said that. Standard Monza wheel covers, which actually look really sharp on this, but you could get a set of 3-prong spinners, which would dress this car up quite a bit. A really nice little package. It's going to be priced right. Let me get it started for you. We do have a little bit of a lifter noise, and most of that's from the car having sat primarily since 2017, but you notice that she starts right up. Starts right up. Idles beautifully, goes right into gear. Your gas gauge works. Wipers work. Single speed wipers, by the way, once again, with no washers. Probably not a New England car. You'll notice a little bit of a lifter tick. Very, very common on these engines when they sit. Usually when you drive them, heat them up, the lifters will pump up. We have driven this car a few times and it's gotten quieter, but it's still evident. I have a feeling the more this car is driven and ridden, the quieter that's going to get. It's not even that terrible. I've heard a lot worse. Close this. So that's a lazy lifter noise that you hear there, and I think the more this car is used and driven, the quieter that's going to get. Not uncommon at all to find on these cars in that engine when they sit. And this car has been pretty stagnant for the past 4 or 5 years. So there you have it. This really nice, really straight, really clean 1964 Corvair Monza Club Coupe. Orphan Car Garage pricing on this car is $7,900. $7,900. You can get in it today and drive it to a car show or a cruise night with your family and not have to worry about it. Although I would probably attend to those tires. You can buy a set of tires online for about $495 for a set of 4. I would probably put a set of tires on this and just enjoy it. Give me a call, 508-954-8090. My name is John. Check out my website, orphancargarage.com. There's a full gallery of photos of this car on that website. Find us on Facebook, like us there. That's where this car will be posted. Also, and as always, subscribe and like to my YouTube channel. We've got this car here today, which probably won't last too long, and I've got some other cool stuff from the same collection coming up within the next week or so that you're not going to want to miss. Thanks a lot for your patronage. Thanks a lot for your support, and we'll see you down the road.